have a wonderful panel for this discussion today and from various parts of the world. I have Saranya Babu, who's joining from the Bay Area. I have Jimit, who's joining from New York. And then I have Amit, who's joining from Pune, where I'm also joining in from. So great to have all of you. And let me start the session. And I would request an introduction of each of the panelists when they give the first answer. So please do your introduction yourself. And I'll start with myself. My name is Girindra Kasmarkar, or Giri for short. And I run Pentathlon Ventures, which happens to be Pune's first VC fund. And it's a VC fund, SEBI-registered AIF Category 1 fund, which is dedicated to early stage B2B tech startups. We have had a great run. We got oversubscribed last year, and now we have done about 15 to 16 investments, and our target is to do 20. So we may be done in a few months, completing our portfolio. Interesting startups in all the spaces which are B2B tech. So it could be fintech, edtech, healthcare, marketing tech, no vertical constraints. And it has been a great time for me and 5 of my partners who had a similar background to myself, which is having entrepreneurship background. We had all run our own companies, grown them to scale globally, and got together to start this fund. So we call our fund for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. So with that introduction, let me start our session today. And I'm going to start with Jimit, you. And Jimit, InMobi has been a great success story that started in India as mCoach. And you became, of course, India's first unicorn, and now a global success story. So I believe most of the audience that we have are planning to sell in India first before going global. However, one would imagine that the GTM could be very different in India and outside. So that's where my question to you is, in your experience, what changes when you go from India to global? What aspects remain the same as far as GTM is concerned, and what can change? What has been your experience?
Thanks, Giri, for the opportunity, and very glad to be on this panel by NPC, helping our fellow community members with the GTM aspects and prospects to go global.
Can you please introduce yourself? Yeah, first.
Sure. So I'm Jimit. I've been with InMobi since it was mCoach back in 2007. I have helped InMobi go global across some 8-9 markets globally. I'm currently based out of New York, but this is my second stint here. I've been in Bay Area before. I've been in China, which I call my home. Done work in Southeast Asia, Australia, Middle East, Europe, many places. So I feel privileged to be on this forum to be able to help other fellow entrepreneurs figure a way to build in India and take things global. When you say InMobi or mCoach, we first started selling in India and then went global. Actually, that's not true. When we actually started selling in Southeast Asia. Purely for a reason that we followed our consumers. We were a mobile ad tech company. We are a mobile ad tech company where our scale and our consumers are on mobile. And back in the day when we started the business, Southeast Asia and Nigeria were actually the 2 markets which had more mobile phones than US or India as a market. So we were actually building in India, but we were selling in Southeast Asia. We then went to Middle East, and only towards maybe early part of 2010, 2011 is when India became prominent on our scene, when Android came and Android started becoming big in the Indian market. But what we were doing throughout our journey, and we continue to do that, is follow where our consumers are, and then build in India, but build for the market.
Excellent. So did you find any change in your GTM in India or in Southeast or in the US, or has it been more or less the same?
No, absolutely. It's never one size fits all, Giri, and you being an entrepreneur would appreciate that fact. We operated pretty much in a hub and spoke model where every country was a spoke. We would take all the learnings and intelligence back to the hub, innovate, reinvent, invent, refit, fit, whatever was required to make it suitable for the market.
Got it. Thanks. Amit, coming to you, in your journey, what was that milestone at which you decided to go global? And I'm assuming that you did start in India and then went outside of India.
Yeah.
First, your introduction, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Amit Mishra, co-founder and CEO of iMocha. We are a skill assessment company for enterprises now. Okay, serving skill assessment for recruitment as well as L&D. Have 8 Fortune 500 customers and 8 Fortune 500 customer plus 20 large enterprises as our customers. Till the date, everyone is in Pune or in India, and we really do not have anyone outside of India as of now as a team. But I would say 80% of our customers are global. Okay. When we started selling, except for first few months when we didn't have a website, okay, we didn't thought iMocha as a global or anything. We thought we need to sell online. Even if someone is asking us to come to meet in Pune, we denied it at the early days even. So we got online in our DNA as the first thing. And when you don't have option, you go global, right? So within first 18 months of that, deciding online as our DNA, and $49 was our monthly plan then. So our biggest plan was $299 a month. So in $6,000 it was unlimited, and now we have 500,000 plus customers paying us annually. So it's a journey from a SOHO customer to large enterprises, Fortune 500 companies, all remote, all online. But our DNA of deciding not to meet customers in physical first help us go global. And the only criteria was you need to have payment gateway in place. We got our first customer from Germany, and then in 18 months we got around 600 customers from across the globe, mostly SOHO, VSB, and SMBs. But from the day one, we were global.
Fantastic. That's great to know. That's so great to learn from first-hand experiences of companies such as yourself. So that really helps in this panel discussion. I'm sure the audience sees a lot of value in that. And so now I come to Saranya, who probably has the biggest amount of experience in doing all of this. She has all her experience in the US, but Saranya, you have done your marketing and business development globally. I mean, you will, of course, introduce yourself and the company that you're with today, but even the past, InstaPay, ChargePoint, Rick, all of these very successful companies that you have done business development and marketing for. And very interestingly, in our pre-discussion for this session, you mentioned that 70% remains the same. So can you please share the insights? What is that 70% that remains the same? What changes? What is that 30% that changes? But what 70% you need to get right anyway? And I would also like you to touch upon whether this changes based on the consideration of whether you have a B2B or a B2C or a B2B2C kind of a model. Since you have done many things, I thought you would be the best to ask this question. Please, Saranya, please introduce yourself and then go on with the answer. Yes.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kirit. Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Very nice to be sharing my experiences with you. I'm Saranya Babu. I'm the CMO at Cloudinary. Currently, I'm the CMO at Cloudinary, which is a media experience platform. And prior to this, the last few years, I've been primarily working, doing marketing and business development for SaaS companies, right? So it's been either, so it's all across the board, right? So I've done the free mobile apps for the two-way marketplace, which is B2C one side and B2B the other side. The B2B is the paid side and B2C is the free side. So which is very like Google is also one such app, right? Like Gmail is on the free side and ads on the paid side. And then Instapage was SaaS, pure SaaS, owned the marketing driving, 100% selling online, but then taking that and then introducing a sales team and then kind of moving up market enterprise that way. Rike, same thing. We had a self-serve and then we had a enterprise side and then freemium as well. And then same thing here. So primarily been on the SaaS side, but also kind of doing the managing both the SaaS and the enterprise at the same time. And how do you manage those walls and between these two products and building both markets at the same time. Products have been sold across 140 countries and across the channel as well as direct. Sales as well as self-serve, right? So this is kind of the journey I've seen. So to go back to your question about the 70%, So it's been, across all of these differences, right? Different type of products, different type of market, mobile app versus online versus sales driven versus product driven. The framework is very similar, right? So before we decide to go into a market, I think it's the assessment. We look at what the demand is, right? One quick way of looking at it is you can look at your brand searches. That's one way to know if there is existing demand. You can look at the brand search of a category or something like that to quickly assess which countries have some existing demand. And then you look at what is the best way to go to the country, right? Sometimes it is a pure partner play. You can't go direct. So we will go through a channel. Sometimes it is a channel. It's just a closing partner, right? Meaning it goes on their paper, but we do all the selling. And then so it's all over the place. But for the online piece, that's the easiest, right? Because all you need to do is localize your product, localize your website. And I simplify that, but that's actually where the meat of the thing is. But once you do that, I think the online selling motion is very similar. The framework is very similar. It's all inbound marketing, so completely driven by a combination of organic and paid. Ideally, when you build up that machine, organic is a majority of that. That's how you kind of get to the efficiency. But to start with, we always kickstart with paid, and then kind of try to get to that efficiency at some point so that the unit economics work. So yeah, that's how I kind of look at the 70%, 30%, right? There's always country differences, regional differences that dictate how you go to market. But with a SaaS product, I think the bulk of how you design, how you build your, how you reach your customers is very similar.
Got it. Saranya, just to follow up on that, would you make any differentiation between when you have a B2B model versus a B2C or B2B2C? Do things change because of that?
Yeah, so on the B2C, my experience has mostly been on the B2B side. But on the, I've had the solopreneurs and, I think what you call SOHO side of things as well. So on the consumer side, it's, so on the B2B side, it's, the go-to-market itself is not very different. But on the B2B side, we do have some of those things where the messaging and how you reach customers and demos and those type of things are there. But otherwise, on the B2C side, it's very kind of emotion driven. Here, it's a little bit of business value driven, but otherwise, I think the go-to-market itself is very similar.
Got it. Let me ask the same question again to Jimit and Amit as well for their experiences. I mean, Amit did talk about doing it online, no matter which country. And so probably he would subscribe to what Saranya said about it's being exactly the same. And I'll come to you, Amit, on that. But Jimit, was that the same for you as well? Did it not change, depending on, first of all, which country you went to and what models do you have for enterprises and what do you subscribe to what Saranya said? You're on mute, Jimit.
This happens every single time. I 100% subscribe to what Saranya said, right? Like it's also a matter of the phase at which you are in as a company. So a lot of companies are product out where the product is ready and then it's all about like trying a fitment in the market. So it's working the reverse way. The genre which I come from, we are in the forward selling world, right? Where we are always starting up new things or taking new initiatives, new business initiatives, right? Where a GTM is slightly different because the product is being built with the market, not ahead of market, right? And this is where the GTM can also differ, right? So the way to look at this is how would a company in its 0 to 1, 1 to 10 phase do GTM, irrespective of B2B or B2C? And then how would that company do their GTM in the 10 to 100, 100,000 phase, right? So I'm very sure Amit has different experiences of GTM for his first 10 customers versus what he does now.
Yes.
It's far more polished, far more, I would say well-funded, far more well-budgeted to do any kind of marketing activities. But when you're in the 0 to 10, it does work the other way around, where you don't care if you're B2B or B2C or B2B2C. These are the boundaries that you put in your mind, but no one else will set you that way. Okay. All you have to do is care about your customer's customer, right? Now, whether your customer is a business and their customer is also a business, doesn't matter. And if your customer is a business who serves and to an end consumer, that doesn't matter, right? For me, a significant part of my last 14-15 year journey was actually B2B.
Okay.
In that sense. But that's only looking backwards. When we started selling, everyone was a customer with a checkbook, right? So how would you sell to them? Versus now, I understand the difference, because now we are more in a B2B2C space very clearly, because at the current business, I service retailers who clearly serve the end consumer, and everything I sell starts with that notion that, okay, how is my consumer going to think about it? Because it's very experience driven and stuff like that. So I feel when you are in that 0 to 10 phase, 0 to 1, 1 to 10 phase, it's not so much about imitating the models of B2B or B2C or B2B2C. All you got to do is put your heads down and look at what are your customer going to think about your product being used at that company. And that's the best signal I think we have picked up all this while as we shaped our value proposition. And as I said, it's very different in our side because we were building with the market, whereas in a lot of stages, you have actually built something that you're fitting to the market.
Great. No, what your customers are thinking is a great insight. Thanks for that. Was there any experience from your the past where you had to change something? What didn't work? Let's say it worked in Southeast Asia but didn't work in India. Worked in India but didn't work in the US. Was there any example? Because that concrete example might help the audience. Yeah,
absolutely. We are one of those rare media companies who can call US and China as their top two markets. No other company can do that actually in the world. So I can tell you the two contrasting worlds in terms of what they expect. So in US, you can actually sit anywhere in the world and you can sell them the product through online demos and stuff like that, because it's a very merit driven, very accommodating environment. So your mistakes, your accents, your gaps are excused because they're very accommodating that way, and they'll focus on the merit of the product. China is a very different thing, where even if you're trying to do, it's always cutthroat, and not cutthroat in a bad way. It's cutthroat because they just have so many people selling the same stuff to them in different wrappers. So you only get like one chance. You have like 25 minutes to make an impact, not even a full 30-minute, right? Because the first 5 minutes are always pleasantries. Now, someone who's sold in US first and then goes to China, like me, I was in US 2010, 11, and then I went to China. It is actually a culture shock on how it moves and how fast it moves. And being an Indian, it shouldn't have impacted me as much, but I was so accustomed to the US market first that China was actually a culture shock to me when it came to selling, right? But then the moment you clear the clutter and focus on customer, they are listening to you. Then because now you're going with an insight that even they didn't know, and now they are listening to you. Now they are reacting to the way they should have reacted in the first place, etc. So there's a way to clear the clutter. Some markets are more bureaucratic, some markets are more wine and dine first, some markets are more merit first. But eventually, when you go to the value that they will deliver to their customers, everyone is listening to you.
Thank you. The great answer. Amit, I know you have stuck to one playbook, no matter which country you're doing it online. But even there, you must have had some false starts, right? The experience of what didn't work actually quite helpful to others that are following your footsteps also. Can you share some thoughts on, in your GTM, what all did you try, what didn't work, and then what worked?
Sure. So Giri, as Jimit rightly said, at different stages for different customer segment, SMB versus medium versus enterprise, these things changes. But first, let me assure you that earning $1 is far easier than earning a rupee. Okay, so you need to be clear about it. Okay, and every SaaS entrepreneur need to understand it. It's only a fear that if you sell in India, you will get fast. There is nothing. You will get communication wise, conversation wise, you will have a lot of it, but it is far easier, okay, to sell to the Western world. I don't have any experiences any country other than English speaking nations. So I'm not the right person to talk about it, but I'm talking about all English speaking nations like US, UK, and others. So it is easy. And moreover, at an early stage, if you categorize Indian SaaS, most of the Indian SaaS companies are by and large quantification wise, metric wise, a company which helps Western world in productivity, okay, improving their productivity, okay. And productivity is by and large a time metric. You save time, and a time of $50-60 a US person per hour is far more valuable than an Indian counterpart, which is 2,000, 3,000 rupees. Okay. So these Americans, the Westerners understand your value far faster than Indian counterparts, because they value their time. Their time is valued in dollar. So I would say, first of all, you need to get it right that if you are going after, if your product definitely need to be suitable for global market, because there are some products which are point solution. There are some product which makes sense only at teams and project level. There are some product which makes sense at department level, and there are some product which makes sense at a global level. Okay, so if you are at project teams and an individual level, you need not think about anything else but a global market from the day one. Okay, because enterprise sales is different from SMB sales. Okay, in SMB typically there is one or two stakeholder, and for them, if your website or the content or any media, any thing that can bring them to your website, ask them to do a trial. In that trial, you can make a wow moment and ask them for some money. They will pay it happily. And this doesn't happen in India as swift as it happens in the US or other world. So you need to be very sure about first what is your segment. If it is up to SMB, and when I say SMB, in US SMB is a company worth $50 million, $100 revenue even is SMB. Okay, and in India, even enterprises, even any SMB, if you go to, they act like an enterprises. So cultural difference. Okay, so selling in Western world is easy if it is a SMB without having any different GTM. So I would say 100% it is the same. Okay,
fantastic. Yeah, go ahead. Please complete.
Coming back to now we are selling to enterprises, Fortune 500 companies. Definitely it changes. You need to get Microsoft, you need to get Ernst & Young, you need to get researchers in picture. Then I would say we are doing quite a lot, 100,000 plus deals. But when you sell to SMB, you sell product. But when you sell to enterprises, it is not a product. It is an ecosystem, product and an ecosystem. And that personal touch, that physical touch matters. So I'm sure like we have a good plan to be having a team in US soon. And same product, what we are getting 500,000 currently, 100K currently, will grow 4x, 5x just because we have a personal touch, because that increases the trust factor, that increases you as a company, that endorses you are present there. So there is no one answer to global GTM. It changes from your product, whether it's a point solution, whether it's a project team solution, whether it's a department solution, or whether it's a org solution. And again, permutation will be applied by SMB, medium, and enterprise.
No, great, fantastic. You made so many very valuable points. We talked about GTM in terms of how you do the reach out, about lead generation and all that. But you made the basic fundamental point about GTM, that is bringing the value that your product is bringing to the customers. And you made that point very well, that the value may be more for, let's say, the US customer than in India, and then it becomes the selling becomes easier. So GTM is fundamentally about getting your value to the potential customers, and you made that point wonderfully. The other point that you made was about human touch may be required for building the trust. Another very important factor. In fact, that leads me to the next question to Saranya. And the main promise of SaaS is remote selling. That's what we were doing. Amit, you said you were doing selling across the world while sitting anywhere. But like you pointed out, and I would like Saranya to elaborate on that. Does it not change when you're talking to different larger companies, for example, B2B, especially enterprise B2B, where you would need presence, you would need that touch that Amit talked about, you may need partners. So I just wanted to understand from you, Saranya, how do you choose between these various options? The answer is clear that you need to do different things for different segments and different markets. But how do you decide on what you want to do? Are you choosing a partner, a channel partner, or are you going to build your team there? Because this is one thing that is foremost on the minds of Indian entrepreneurs when they want to go to the US. Do they put their own person there, or do they choose a partner? Since you have experience of entering into many countries, did you kind of sit and decide, okay, I'm going to this country, this is my plan for that country? How do you make those actual steps? How do you plan those steps and how do you execute on them? That would be very useful for the audience.
Yeah, so a lot of points that Amit mentioned, right, are very valid for this type of question. So um, so I'll give you an example, right? When you start a business, I've worked at businesses that started with the enterprise and then tried to go down market for the volume, and I've done the reverse as well, right? They started with the volume and then tried to go up market. There are challenges to both, but when you start with SaaS, right, the good thing about SaaS, when I say SaaS, selling online, right, self-serve, right, product led, there is no salesperson. You may have some customer success, but not really sales, right? So product is actually doing the selling, and then marketing is getting those leads, right? So pretty much, I think what works there is it's high volume, right? So you can get the high volume right away. So there is a lot of people coming in. You can quickly validate a product. You can see what they're using, how they're using it. You can see what features they're using, how they're using it. So all those things you get very quickly, right? And then this is typically, right, led by users, right? People that are savvy enough to research themselves. They're looking for to solve a problem themselves, and they're looking and they're hands-on, right, searching for the solution, trying the solution, using the solution, right? So this is user led, right, completely user based. So UX design from the beginning, it's all about the UX, and design is the biggest piece, right? So the product has to almost like speak to you and welcome you and onboard you and all of that, right? So it's very user driven, right? It's not yeah, so the user and the buyer are the same. And typically that happens only in smaller companies, right? Very small companies where this person can make the decision to use the product, start using it and start delivering some value, right? They're using it. As you go higher up, right, to bigger companies, then, their security becomes important. A bigger company, the disruption is also very expensive, right? A smaller company, you see typically $1 million to $10 million companies, you pivot like a couple of times, right? Maybe like more than that, pivot like 2 or 3 times, maybe like 5 to 10 times too. Sometimes I've seen that, even though I don't think that's healthy, but sometimes you have to do it, right? And then between 10 to 100 million, you pivot at least like 1 or 2 times. And then even past 100 million, sometimes you pivot, right? But when you're as you grow bigger, the people don't pivot, right? Because you're becoming a ship. You're not a steamboat anymore, right? You're a ship, and you're carrying a lot of people, and the disruption is very expensive, disruptive, and you don't want to do that. So the business continuity is extremely important. Another thing is that they already have an ecosystem, right? They're not going to rip and replace everything just to accommodate your product. So the ability for your product to fit in with all of the other software and their ecosystem. So integrations and all those things are more important than actual features, right? They may actually get a product with less features that integrates with their ecosystem, or that you will integrate into their ecosystem with your professional services, right? Whatever that is, so those things start to matter. The security, because the cost of security breach is very high, right? For a company like Microsoft versus like a small company, there's not a lot for the people to like steal from you. So all of those things start to become important. And then they also, because that is important, they also want to work with a company that will stick around for, they would stay for long, right? So they also want a company that will stick around for many years to come, right? It's not like a garage startup that will pivot and go away, or that will cease to exist. So that's also important for them. And those trust factors, right? Which is how many customers do you have, what logos you have, do you have a person I can talk with who can walk me through this? Do you have a person who I can call? And if I have a problem, within like, a certain service level agreement, right? So all of those things become very important. So which is why, when you go up market, you have a sales, you have professional services, support, SLAs, integrations, ecosystem partnerships, all those things become very important. And so that is when, but it's a different thing, right? You try to get a bigger deal, takes longer. So it's very different. But typically, you would do that after your product market fit is done, and then you've got the volume, and then you want to like because when you get the volume, also the thing with the SaaS is you also get high churn, right? It's easy to get in, but it's also easy to get out. So at some point you have to like break out of that and have some more kind of persistent customers, right? So longer ELTV and all lifetime value and everything. So you go up. So it does differ, right? As the company sizes increase, depending on what you want to do. So same thing with the markets as well. Some countries are emerging. Some countries are very mature. Some countries, so for example, if you go to Japan, right, it's a very traditional. They value people with like, what comes from like someone with 30 years of experience versus like some, person that started a business 2 years ago, right? So everything is done through a conglomeration of companies. And so Japan is almost always partners with a little bit of a direct team, right? But that's where we actually invest. We, even for the content, we create a content team there because you can't use like an agency because the language is different, context, everything is different. China, same thing, right? You have those. China, there's a lot of government restrictions as well, right? We have to like use their exchanges. There's many restrictions there. Some other markets are much easier to go into, right? So, for example, the English-speaking markets, as you mentioned, right? I think they're more used to buying online and trusting kind of vendors. So we typically are able to sell to them directly, much more than like even going through a partner. Again, partnerships don't work for all products as well. So if your product is a very well-known category, budget line item is understood, yes, right, this channel exists. But if you're creating a category or if you're like a SaaS product, there's no goods that are moved, right? So partnership comes in where, if you don't want to invest an on-site team and you want to try it out without investment and see the market exists, I think partnerships are good to go. Or if you want to close on the paper and you don't have a currency set up there for like an entity or whatever that is, then those type of things. But for SaaS, typically I've seen direct works unless like some of these things I talked about.
Thank you so much, Saranya. That was a very detailed and great answer for most of our audience who wanted to know about these things. I'm now going to go around the table for my next question, and which is regarding the pandemic. How has pandemic changed the mindsets? They have changed the mindset dramatically, of course, in terms of remote working and everything. But how has that helped you or hurt you in your GTM, in your company, in the role that you're doing now? Can each one of you tell a couple of lines how your GTM has changed? Jimit, yeah.
Sure, I agree. I can go first. I think for starters, it has leveled the ground to value. Like earlier, people with bigger sales team would get more business, even if there was the less value, just because they would throw in people at problems and the wine and dine culture and all of that. I think the one good change I'm seeing is across ecosystem, actually, me as a consumer and then me as a vendor to someone else, both ways. The emphasis has gone significantly on the value that the product is bringing more than anything else. Like everything else is a facade now. And the focus is purely on how much value can you lend me into that 30-minute, 1 hour, 2 hour meeting. The elevator pitches have become more real now than any time else before this. So I feel it's a good scenario for most part where direct and crisp communication helps. There are sectors and there are partners that suffer just because of articulation or a need for articulation. That they have great products, the product works very well, but just because they have not been exposed to this selling, there's a lot of disruption in how they sell because they can't package their message in that 30-minute window sometimes. And even this whole online demo has a way about it, right, where it will always work before the call and after the call it will just not work on the call. So we are getting exposed to these scenarios now on both sides of the aisle. But overall, I feel it's just bringing out more efficiency. It's forcing everyone to be more focused and more value focused than show focused.
Thanks, Jimit. I think you covered the ground very well. Was there any other points, Saranya or Amit, you had to make about pandemic, or you 100% agree with Jimit?
Yeah, 100% agree with Jimit. To add to it, like digital adoption has been accelerated like anything. It's fast. In our case, especially where we are a content first company which create questions and deliver it on a simulation platform. For us, it was good because what has happened in recruitment is a talent war. So more and more assessment need to be taken to fill up a position. So market has gone up. Second, for us again, pandemic has helped because previously though learning and development technology was in place, but it was not adopted by every company. Still classroom trainings were a major and stuff like that. Pandemic accelerated that. The next question, the next problem they are solving is once L&Ds, LMS, and those problems are solved, and training problem are solved, they are looking for skill assessment. So for us, it has opened up a new use case, and in Talent War, it has accelerated more assessment. So it's a clear-cut benefit for the market as far as iMocha as a company is concerned. For others, fellow SaaS startup I'm talking about, digital adoption has accelerated their growth.
We are running out of time. Saranya, did you want to add anything, or should we close the discussion?
No, I think just one line, right? It is because everybody is getting digital touches. It just put a lot of pressure to really up the quality of your online experience on how you engage with customers. I'll just close with that.
Okay. And I will now end our discussion. Thank you so much for all your insight. Were very valuable for our audience. I just wanted to add one element that India is also part of the globe. Of course, when you're talking about going global, there are a lot of challenges that, especially during the pandemic, and this point came to me because of the pandemic, that the tech was not able to reach even the hinterland, the remote consumers that we have in India itself, based on the digital divide, on which side of the digital divide we are. That's what they call the K-shaped recovery. So maybe it's a challenge for startups and for tech companies to figure out the GTM of how to reach those remote consumers, because not only that helps them use the tech and benefit, whether it is in fintech, healthcare, edtech, agri-tech, whatever, but it also is a great business opportunity because those consumers are not being served right now. So, it will be great to have a discussion on what GTM could be used for that, and maybe another time. And thank you so much again, and really appreciate your time and for this wonderful discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Giri.
Thanks, Saranya. Thanks, Jimmy.